Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. This episode, what would you do? Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros Radio Show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation. This edition's entitled, What Would You Do? To help me explain, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy, John. John, I have been traveling this week, and I have not been working. What have you been working on?
Hey, Larry. Yes, I've been, and welcome back, by the way. I have been working at a customer site on some hardwood flooring, as well as some stairs, stair issues that they've had.
Really?
Yeah.
So let's just get clear, because we need the details, right? So we need details. Is this 3/4 inch tongue and groove flooring? Is that what it is?
Yes, it's number one common oak. So just like just to make sure that the listeners understand, this isn't engineered wood that's been finished off in a factory or anything else. This is site finished wood that's you put it in, you nail it down, and then you sand it, stain it, and poly it, put a cover, some kind of coating on top of it.
How old is this floor?
This is about a 25-year-old floor that has not been really touched at all. So it's really due to be sanded, the whole thing. Now there's a couple of boards in there that were just awful, that were buckled up and chipped. And I also had a similar situation where I had to have a board removed when they were doing my flooring. And it was about 2 feet outside the refrigerator. And really what was going on there is that sometimes the wood is not, there's probably some voids and faults with the wood itself. But over a period of time, when people stand in front of the refrigerator and you're pulling on the refrigerator, and you might be wearing, so there were some, shoes that were grinding into the wood, and it was awful. So they replaced that board. So this is quite common that you would have to replace a board. These things do, they do get bad. And the good news is you can replace it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make an additional comment. So in front of the refrigerator, because of the total amount of volume that people do in front of the refrigerators, but the other thing is there's a little bit of condensation. It's a place where things get wet, and wet is never good when it comes to wood, right? We always say that,
Yeah, and that's right. That's right. And also once the wood starts to go a little bit and it starts to deteriorate, then that even accentuates that issue.
Yep. So, all right. So you've got a couple of boards you're going to replace, and what were some of the challenges? So you're looking at the boards. The first thing that comes to my mind is, where do I get replacement boards? Like what?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is something that for everybody should be aware of. Is if you do have a site finished hardwood floor, that I wish that I would have taken kept more of the wood, the pieces of wood that come in these great big packs that they bring, that you can buy, because I had a real hard time finding an individual piece. Now, I'm not a flooring company, so anybody out there that's listening that runs a flooring company is probably going, we got tons of that stuff in our truck. But for the normal person, the handyman out there, or the homeowner, these things can be quite, I had a little bit of a difficulty finding it, actually. And I went around to a number of places, called a lot of places, now I could buy a whole pack of it for $100, but I didn't need $100. I only needed, maybe, 5 feet of it, 5 feet, 6 feet of it.
5 linear feet. Yeah. But I do have a comment to make. That fire that we had at your house back when you built your house, it was awesome.
Yeah.
that oak burns really, really well. That's the world's most expensive firewood.
It's kind of funny you say that, because I did have a neighbor that was in the flooring business, and we did a pig roast one time. We put a pig in the ground and stuff, and he brought over a whole truck full of scrap lumber
of
from
scrap
those
oak.
jobs.
Yeah, right.
And
It's great firewood.
It was awesome.
That's great. That's great firewood. So anyway, sorry about that. So tell us, how did you eventually find the single boards or that 5 feet worth of wood that you were looking for?
Well, the homeowner, as I was looking in one direction, she was looking in another direction. Quite smart was to put out a little message on the message board at one of these apps, neighborhood apps called Nextdoor.
Yep.
And sure enough, and I thought, hey, this is brilliant because people have this stuff all over the place and they probably just want to get rid of it. Get it out of my garage, out of my basement, because I've got a lot of wood down in my basement that I really don't use, and if anybody wants, but
you just didn't have any oak flooring.
Yeah, I just didn't have the oak flooring of all the things. Right. And I actually built my bar out of oak flooring, and so I didn't even have scraps of it left. But somebody had it, and she went over and picked up a bunch of it, actually.
Yeah, a couple of pieces. So that's kind of awesome. But part of that tip is one of the tips is, if you are having a floor put in, a brand new floor, keep some of it. Now, you can get carried away, and you don't have to carry, you don't need 75 board feet of it, but keep 10 or 12 feet of it, because there is a point eventually where you're going to need it. And one thing I've noticed on any kind of site finished floor, actually really any floor, even LVT, we noticed this in LVT, different batch lots have different colors, they're very slight, but they have different colors.
No, absolutely. That's going to happen now. Fortunately, with oak, something like this, yes, there's going to be a difference, but since it's sanded and everything, you can pretty much blend it in. But you're absolutely right, with an engineered floor that you kind of either, and I'll say, well, not click together, or it's still maybe 3/4 inch tongue groove and you're nailing it down, but it's pre-finished.
Yep.
Which those products are fantastic these days.
Yep.
Honestly, those things are great, because you can't get the type of coating on a floor that you finish off in your house like they can in the factory under the amount of pressure that they put those things under. So they're very tough. But you should keep some of that wood, because you're absolutely right. The batches and the lots will vary.
Right.
So, to get an exact match, and, keep some of those boards around. I know it's a kind of a pain to push that stuff around every now and again, but you'll be happy you had it.
You'll be happy when you need it. Yeah, that's exactly it. Stick it up in the rafters or something, and keep a couple of them. So, all right. So now you've got the materials. You've got you've identified what needs to be repaired. You've identified a number of the amount that you needed. You've obtained the material. So now you've got to remove the board. Right. So what's the process?
Well, I watched them do mine, and of course they have some specific tools for that, some saws, but you can do this with a circular saw and be able to just take the saw, set the depth to the board itself and saw up the middle of the board, right, lengthwise, and of course not cutting the adjacent boards, but getting very, very close. That's what I did, and then be able to just take a chisel and take the rest of the be careful and just chisel the board apart in half, and you can pick it up. Now just note that the one side, the tongue side, is going to have some nails in it, and you're just going to pop those nails out.
So, folks, if you've never seen real hardwood floors put down, or real tongue and groove 3/4 inch hardwood boards put down, what they do is they have a flooring nailer. It is actually a nailer. Today they're pneumatic. They used to be manual, but today they're pretty much pneumatic. They hook it to an air hose, and what it is it's like a handle, and it sits at a 45-degree angle, and they take a mallet and they hit the top of this thing. And what it does is it pushes the tongue and groove board together, and at the same time it shoots a nail through at a 45-degree angle right at the base of the tongue of the wood, and drives it down into the subfloor. And what that does is that allows for the hardwood boards, the tongue and groove part, to be very tight. So it makes it very, very tight when you join it together, and it nails it to the floor. So on almost all what I call real hardwood floors, that's how they're attached together if they have a subfloor.
Right.
So this is when John describes this, that you're going to have nails in it, you're going to have nails on one side because the other side actually has a nail above it that you won't take off. And so that's where we're at with that. So understanding how the floor goes down originally will help you with this repair. So where are we at now, John? So you've cut it out and you've chiseled you've broken out the parts of the board and you've got it out. Yep.
Yeah, so you're basically breaking that. You're cutting it, breaking it in half, and picking out the pieces. So now you're left with a hole, with a regular, But note that the tongue and groove might still be there, right, from the old one. It depends upon what board you took out, and so. You have to, cut a new piece. And what I did was I cut a new piece to the exact dimension, and I actually sanded the board down. You're gonna have to sand all this stuff down, so it can take the stain. And of course, it's fit like finishing any type of wood. And then I had to chisel off the tongue and be able to get this thing back in. So not the front. I left the front tongue in, so it would meet up with the board I was doing. So I pushed that in, put this one down, and just you could use a rubber mallet or whatever and knock this thing into place.
Yeah, and it's tight, isn't it?
It's yeah, very very tight. It's surprisingly tight. Now I will tell you, because there's going to be a difference in humidity with new boards and old boards, so that can offer a little bit of a challenge. But you'll figure it out when you start to try to match it up. And in this case, these were 2 and 1/4 inch boards.
Okay, so fairly narrow then.
Yeah.
And so all right, so you put them in. So you pushed them. You basically did you use a mallet to knock them down in?
Yes.
Okay, so you malleted them down in. Did you do anything else?
So after I got down, so now I've got a sanded board actually, because I didn't want to sand it when it was in there, because I'm going to scratch up all the adjacent boards,
right?
By just being a little sloppy with a sander. But and then I actually shot some brads through it right from the top. That's what they did on my floor. The brads that I used actually buried themselves deeper into the oak than the guys that did my floor, which I can see the nail heads. But what I did was, you can barely see them, but it's still there. This sunk itself in. That pneumatic nailer, or the ones that we have, really work great. And I shot that thing down with I think it was about a 2-inch brad in just a couple of places, just to hold it there. And that I filled in those holes. I kind of just was real careful and sanded it. I taped it up around the perimeter of it with some blue tape, so I wouldn't scratch the other floors. So I kind of resanded it. I puttied those holes up, and now I'm ready to mix up some stain to match the old floor, which was a real challenge, by the way.
So just backing up just a bit. So if somebody doesn't have a pneumatic stapler or a pneumatic gun, right, like we do, what if they were using hand nails? What would you do? I mean, if they were using hand finishing nails, you would tell them to put the hand in. Would you tell them to set it with a nail set?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. You want to get that underneath the surface of the wood. And then I will tell you that a round finishing nail, sometimes these round nails can be a little bit of a challenge on a floor that will move. So most of the nails that they do use are kind of like a T-shaped on the top.
Yep. So set that down and then just use a little wood putty over the top. Then you resanded it. You put tape around the edges just to keep it clean so the sander didn't hit it. And then you mixed up the stain. So you were going there, but how hard is it to do that stain? Is it like paint? Let's go there. Is it like paint?
So here's a tip if you're going to do this, folks. And now if you have something it's a real challenge for you, and you kind of struggle with stain. Now I have a whole variety of stain, so I can play with it. But if you go to a an upper scale paint store. They are very good at matching stain. Usually it'll take them, if you bring in the old piece of wood, it'll take them about 24 hours to match up the stain. But they're very good at doing it. And then you have, an exact, a really exact match. But I got very, very, very close because I remember the color that they put down on my floor initially. But over time, it worked. Very close. The problem was this floor was so old that, the old top coat, the old poly was yellow.
Yep.
And back then they would use, and they still do, but an oil-based poly, and oil-based polys will start to turn yellow over time. So, this floor really was showing its age, and so.
Well, that's sounds like you and me.
That's right.
We're certainly not we're certainly not the men we were 25 years ago. Let's just put it that way. That's right. I personally think we're like fine wine. We actually get better with age, but whatever. So we always kind of chide. We chide ourselves. Both John and I hate doing trying to match stuff because it's really difficult. I've always found it to be almost impossible to match colors or in this case stains, but paint colors and things, even with the exact paint. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier where we said about batch colors and things. You can even put the same paint on the wall and it's the same batch and it still doesn't look right because it's got a year and a half of wear on it, if you want to call it that. But stain is even worse. This is 25-year-old stain. But it came out super close.
It came out really good. Now the good news about a floor is you're usually, at least 5.5 feet to 6.5 feet away from it at any one time, really, when you're walking. So you really don't see it, and you can get it. I got it so close that if I didn't tell you which boards, you probably wouldn't notice.
Right.
Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to put some clear poly on it because it can't just have stain on it. It's got to be sealed up. But it's going to look a little different now. What I've done in the past is when I fix, and we had a segment on this before on fixing scratches in floors, but this trick kind of still works. Is that I've taken just kind of a what was it, a Scotch-Brite pad, and I would put the stain down and see how the stain matched the poly, and I'd see how the poly matched the surrounding poly. So even if it was a matte, not gloss, not satin or whatever, but if it was a little off on the gloss of the poly, you could kind of adjust it with just taking this and lightly dusting that just to knock the gloss off of it to match the surrounding poly, if that's the case.
Yeah, basically scratch it up like people have been walking on it for 25 years. Right?
Just to buff it, just a little bit. You get a little finesse going. It's a little bit of an art, but you get it, and it. When I fix my floor, you can't even tell. I mean, it just came out perfect. But so that's what I'll be doing over here as well when I go back, because I have to fix some balusters that the dogs in the house had chewed up along the railing going on up to the second story, the second floor, and so all right. So that basically finishes up the project. Is that correct? Yeah, pretty much. I was really, and the homeowner was really happy with the way it came out. I mean, it just was, like a brand, and I think the way it came out so good, you get to thinking, maybe I'll redo the whole floor. But then now you're,
no.
Right? So, you keep going, right? But now you're talking about, a $10,000 project. So
Right. So a couple more questions. So about how long, so you replaced about 5 linear feet, you said, right?
Right.
Was it a single board or was it 2 boards? I thought it was two. It was 2 boards. Okay. So you replaced 2 boards. How long did this project take you?
This project took me, I think it was about 2.5 hours.
Okay. So if you're a novice, you've never done it before, probably 3.5 hours?
Yeah. I mean, so let me just say this. I'm not in the flooring business. I'm not the flooring professional out there. And there really is an art to putting down floor, and especially the way you sand it.
Right.
That's a whole nother that's a whole nother show there. But so I kind of took my time to do it. The guy that did it here, when he replaced my board, I watched him, and he just zipped it right out, busted it right out, and just put one back in no time. So if anybody out there is in the flooring business, I know I've seen you guys work, so I get it. But for the rest of us that haven't done it, and we're just DIYers and handyman stuff that don't do it all the time, I figured out a couple hours to be careful and so I didn't scratch up the rest of the floor because I wasn't going to redo the whole floor.
Right. So a couple 2.5, 3 hours or so. You need a circular saw. You need
chisel,
some finishing nails, and then what? Some staining pads and things like that. Just and a little bit of sandpaper.
You can just use a rag and some stain.
Yep.
I think the thing that's going to take you, the thing that took me the longest, okay, was number one, finding the wood.
Yep.
Now, if you have that, no problem. But I think in the scheme of things, is matching the stain.
Yep. All right. Well, awesome. So, and then the one last tip that we said is if you have your floors, or if you're redoing your floors in general, keep some extra, right? So that you don't have that hard problem. Because you spent hours. I know you called me earlier. You're like, do you know where you can get a single couple boards of? And I'm like, no.
I actually was a little amazed that you could not, that I couldn't find, any loose pieces of
hardwood floor.
What this was is number one common red oak,
right?
And it was I was just amazed. So just kind of word to the wise out there to do this, to make sure you can find some, and some of the listeners out there, please, email us if there's a trick to finding some of that. I'd love to know and dispense that kind of information back out to the, listening audience, because that was one of the things that like I said, was, I could, taken aback by that. It took me that long to find that.
Well, perfect. You know what I think? I think the spaceship has landed.
And what kind of guy are you, Larry? What kind of guy? Tell us. You got a kind of
do we
guy
look
that looks
at
in
it? Or do we take it apart?
That looks in it, or are you going to what?
I'm going to take it apart. I'm going to figure it out.
There you go. There you go, buddy.
So, folks, we've got a bunch of listeners from all around the country and actually all around the world, and we just want to give a shout out to all of us all of those people that have sent us emails at questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. We want to shout out Keith and James and Stacy and Cindy and Preston and a bunch of other people, everybody that sent it. If we haven't gotten to your email yet, we are working on it as fast as we can, but please keep those emails coming. We really appreciate it. It also spurs our ideas about things that happen in other parts of the country, because if you don't know it, we live in Atlanta, and Atlanta has different concerns. Now, we both grew up in the north, so we get the kind of the northern thing, but it certainly it spurs ideas for us. So if you do have any questions, send us a question at Handyman Pros Radio Show, or it's questions@handymanprosradioshow.com, and we'll get to it. So speaking of that, from the email bag at questions@handymanprosradioshow.com, we received an email from Jim. Jim asks, can you send me $200 for bail? What is this? One of your friends there, singer? It's got to be.
From the local lockup?
From the local lockup. No, just kidding.
Not again.
Not again, right. Jim told us that he's traveling for an extended period of time. What tips can you give for maintaining the house while he's gone? So we didn't get an idea of what his extended period of time, what that actually meant, but we're going to talk about things like we'll answer the question for Jim about things that are going to be like at least 2 weeks, maybe longer. And then we kind of spun down this road of if you happen to have a second house and say you were going to winterize it for the winter. So some of the biggest things, in my opinion, you have to worry about is water, right, John?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we've mentioned this before, but and I would say do this even if you're going to be gone for a week, but go up to the street and turn your water off. Turn it off at the meter. We've said that one before. We've said it several times, but nothing says restful sleep like knowing that if a pipe bursts, there's no water coming out of the tap, right? Nothing says that better than turning the water off. But in an associated fashion, John, have you ever had a house, or have you ever been into a house that the P-traps have dried out?
I have, and it's not a pleasant. It's not a pleasant arrival when you get in there, and it's something that is avoidable. And what we're talking about is the P traps underneath every sink,
showers,
anything that where the water's running out of, and there's like a gooseneck under there that keeps water in it, so that the sewer gas does not back up into your house. So the water is a kind of a safety valve for that.
So one of the quick indicators that might have happened is you'll get these little black flies, and they're actually called sewer flies, and you will see them flying around in your bathrooms or wherever that trap happens to be. It happens in the laundry room every once in a while. But they're these little black flies, and they're very unique. They look like sewer flies. But anyway, look them up online, Google sewer flies, and you'll see them. But that's one indication. So, John, how do we fix that problem?
Yeah, so there's a few things. Now, I did this at my parents' house. I had to leave that up in Chicago for an extended period of time, and I say extended. That was, I think, 2 months. But there's some tricks to doing this. Now, this is what I did. Was number one is that I actually covered the toilet bowl with saran wrap, so that it was it reduced the evaporation of the water in there, because there's a lot of water in there, and it has a lot of surface area actually, and it'll evaporate rather quickly,
faster than you think. Yeah,
faster than you think. The other thing is that you can put in a couple of teaspoons of vegetable oil down the drain. So that vegetable oil is going to float to the top of the water, and it won't evaporate like the water. So it kind of seals the water in there too.
Yeah, it actually forms a very thin film over the top.
That's right.
And it becomes, I don't want to say solid, but it's impermeable to air is what it is.
Yeah. So it really does protect that water barrier in this P trap that we talked about.
Yep, and that's one of the simplest things you can do. But do remember to do it in all your P traps, and remember there's a P trap wherever water drains off of anything. So laundry, sinks, showers, all of that stuff. And it's just a quick little thing. And so we used to actually have to close a place up for the winter time. So we actually winterized a place. And what we did, because we turned the heat off and the electric off, we actually poured antifreeze, real antifreeze, just that you get out of the car. Antifreeze or windshield wiper fluid, either or. But usually we used antifreeze because where we lived it was really cold. And so we'd pour antifreeze into the traps. And that was something that we did. We didn't use a lot, but we used enough to keep the traps antifreeze, and that also kept the sewer gas. It does not evaporate very rapidly.
Right, that's true.
And so if you're going to be gone and you're going to turn your heat off, if you're truly winterizing a place, adding a little antifreeze. You can go to an RV store. They have environmentally friendly stuff now. Back in the day, this was back in the 70s, they didn't not have environmentally friendly stuff, but there's plenty of environmentally friendly products. Go to an RV store. They'll tell you to winterize, because it's the same thing when you have an RV. You got to winterize it. Got to do that. So yeah, coming home to a broken toilet's not a whole lot of fun when it's actually when it's frozen and crack the whole toilet, right? Is what you have to do. What else do we say? You said you had a good one, John. You said change the batteries in your thermostat if you have.
That's one of the things. Right? So now we didn't turn the electricity off. So there's a couple of things, that I was, just making sure that the thermostat had fresh batteries so that it would continue to heat. Yep. Now, of course, the heat would be turned way down. But if the thermostat went out and I was away,
or power
that would not a good thing. So that was just a little peace of mind. So if you leave the electricity on for the house, and you're really kind of going into a stasis, of that, where you're not really doing much with it, but from a heating perspective, if you will, and that was the main thing when you're up north. Just want to keep the home warm, so that nothing busts and those kind of things. But that was one of the things that I did. I will tell you that I also had a car up there, and one of the things is that if you leave a car for an extended period of time, the battery's going to go. And for $25, you can get a trickle charger and stick it on your car or on your lawnmower. So for those people that do have homes that you're leaving and for an extended period, this is also a really good idea to do. So you don't come home to dead batteries.
Yeah, we do the same. We use solar chargers for the same reason, both on any vehicle that we don't run on a regular basis, which includes boats and stuff like that. Put a solar charger on it. That way you're just keeping the battery warm, and that helps it last, tremendously longer. One of the other things on your house too is, make sure you have your mail picked up. Have a neighbor or something come either pick up your mail or
have it stopped.
Have it forwarded. Any of those kinds of things. Have somebody, if you can, have a friend or something check on it. If you're going to be gone for a really long time, have somebody check on it every once in a while. Just eyeball it. That's all you need.
That's another. So these days, Larry, you can. I would recommend that people get a couple. If they don't already have it, get a couple of cameras.
Yep.
If your electricity's still on, it doesn't take anything to run your Wi-Fi within that place, and most houses have that. And now you've got a camera, and you can take a look at everything.
And you can see your neighbors picking up their packages. No, that happens. That happens at our house all the time. Where we live, it's a long story, but we share a driveway. So forever, we get the neighbors' packages. They walk in on the camera, they wave.
Yeah, right.
So any other tips, John?
The other thing is just I always would put timers on the lights.
Timers on the lights. That's a good one. Or today, if you're internet connected, turn them on and off on a regular basis.
Yep. Or get some solar lights or whatever. But something like that. But I took care of that house from that perspective, and I never had an issue with it.
Right. All right. So I hope that answers your questions, Jim. If anybody has any comments on that, please don't, again, hesitate to send us an email about that if there's other ideas, because we will mention them on the air. But those are just some ideas that have worked for both John and I. And not that we travel a lot, but we've traveled enough. We've been out in a while, and we do know some of the things that happen. So once again, questions at handymanprosradioshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this podcast and have derived some value from it, here's 4 things you can do. 1, tell your friends about this podcast. 2, hit subscribe on your podcast player. While you're there, leave us a review. 3, subscribe to our newsletter by going to handymanprosradioshow.com and click on the subscribe button. We'll inform you of upcoming events, shows, and give you actionable tips for maintaining your home and property. And 4, send us an email with your questions to questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. That's handymanprosradioshow.com. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.